Good evening. It's very difficult to believe that it's actually a full year since Sheldon's passing. Actually, one of his longtime rabbis, rabbis starting from Rabbi Klein to Rabbi Shur, Rabbi Pilavin. Rabbi Pilavin was not able to be there and make it to the actual funeral. Marcia asked if he would be able to share a few words before Dr. Presby speaks. I'd like to ask Rabbi Pilavin to say a few words.
Thank you, Rabbi Zusso. I first met Sheldon 15 years ago this month when I first arrived in Manalapan. He asked for the meeting, and I decided I better prepare for the meeting, but fortunately I had an advantage. Just a few weeks earlier, Sheldon had been honored at our shul as Man of the Year, and I had a whole booklet of tributes to him and about him. And I was absolutely amazed by the sheer range of the community that participated in the journal, and what I'm told anecdotally participated in the breakfast itself. Sheldon was a charter member of our what was then the Levy Study Group, which last week began its 16th consecutive year on Wednesday mornings. And I'm going to start with a tip of the cap to our Parsha. I was thinking of the Pasuk, Lo Tacharosh Shor V'Chamor Yachdav. Like you're not supposed to plow with an ox and a donkey together. I don't know what that suggests to you, but with a little bit of an educational bent, it always seemed to me the Torah validation of tracking in Jewish studies, that you don't put vastly dissimilar students together in the same class, because you don't put me in Einstein's introductory physics class, because I'll be totally confused and Einstein would be even in worse shape. But that dovetails with a very important part of Pirkei Avot, which I would say was implicitly Sheldon's signature teaching. And that was Lo Habaishan Lamed. The person that's shy, that's timid, that's bashful, cannot learn. And the reason why I say that is because those of you who know Sheldon was many things, and Eloi was not one of them. He had difficulty quickly grasping certain concepts in class. And I'm going to make that my tribute to him today, because even though academics was not his strong suit, he could be found anywhere a shiur could be had in this area. He could be found at Torah Links. He could be found at Kollel. He could be found at JLC. And of course, he could be found at Sons of Israel. He could be found wherever, asking 1,000 questions. Very often, some version of the same question more than once. It got me thinking that Shulchan Aruch had it right. Harav shelimed v'lo hevinu hatalmidim. If a teacher is teaching and the students didn't chop it, lo yichos alehem, shouldn't get angry at him, at those students. Ella shonev v'chozer davar kama pamim ad shiavinu omek halacha. Rather, the teacher should go over it as many times as it takes for the student to grasp the material. V'lo yomar hatalmid hevanti v'hu lo hevin. And a student should never bluff. He shouldn't say, got it, I hopped it, when it's not the case. And then furthermore, we are told, Ela sho'el v'chozer v'sho'el kama pa'amim. He should keep going back, asking the teacher as many times as it takes. V'im yichos alav rabo. And if he gets the better of his teacher's patience, what should he tell his teacher? Torahi v'lilmod ani tzarich. It's Torah, and I have to learn it. Sheldon was many, many things. But at the top of his virtues, I will say there was a dogged persistence about him in so many areas. One of them, of course, being in study. As difficult as it was for him, he embraced the mitzvah of Talmud Torah like few Iluyim, like few prodigies. He was not a baishan, he was not bashful, any which way you measure that term, but particularly not when it came to studying Torah. He is an example to all of us that whatever we imagine our limitations to be, they should never get in the way of our being the best that we could. One motivational speaker said it is better to be thought of as uninformed than to be uninformed. Sheldon took that to heart. As many times as it took him, that's how many times he asked. And anytime I have a student that's that persistent, I see the Yukano Shel Yeshaya Lev Ben Moshe Halevi. I see the beautiful image of Sheldon asking that question once again until he fully grasped it. May that persistence be said of us, and may his memory be a blessing.
Amen. Before handing over the floor to Dr. Presby, just I think it's the right time to make a few thank yous, say a few brief words about Sheldon. First of all, thank you to Marcia for putting this together, arranging this, I'm sure it happened. David Rosenthal, once again. For your persistence in making sure this happens. And really, a thank you from Marcia and really from Sheldon to David Shalom and Miriam, our very own Dave Rosen, for going through a year, making sure to make it to Shachar, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. That someone should say Kaddish, not just someone should say Kaddish, but someone who is close to Sheldon, who knew Sheldon, should say Kaddish. It's not a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that right before the Yartzeit, I finally had that final procedure to make yourself back, give yourself back that strength that should come back to you, that you deserve. I'm sure that Yeshaya Levi is looking after you and keeping you in mind. We say in davening every day, Dirshu Hashem v'uzay. Seek out Hashem and His might. Bakshu fonav tamid. Seek out His presence always. Search out Hashem. Look for Hashem's might. Look for Hashem to see the wonders of His ways. Always. When one looks into science, looks around at the wonders of Hashem. So the way Rashach, Panovich Rashiva put it, was he doesn't understand why does the Torah even need to give a mitzvah and say, believe in Hashem. I need a mitzvah to believe in Hashem. He said, I wake up in the morning, I look out the window, I see the sun shining. I walk outside, I feel the breeze. I see Hashem's beautiful trees. How could you not believe in Hashem? And it was a question that he grappled with for years. Each time giving a different explanation. What is it that we're missing? That many people don't recognize that. He's like, just open your eyes. Take a look. How can you not see it? But he said, but just look around. Most people don't see it. Obviously, there's something that some people just don't get it. We need that mitzvah. He said, why should we need that mitzvah? I think the answer really lies in this passage. Yes, if you look for it and you search for it, you'll see it. But you need that mitzvah to search for it. The Torah says, open your eyes and search. Look out, you'll see Hashem's might. You'll see His wondrous ways. You can be a doctor, you can be a scientist, you can be a scholar. If you're not going to open your eyes and you're not going to search, you're not going to see it. To say one attribute about Sheldon was that bikush, that searching, that wanting, the longing to learn something new. Still, Rabbi Eisenberg by the funeral kept on saying how every time he wanted to start another class on another topic, he would want to try to calculate how many people are going to show up to the class. He said there was always a number one. Sheldon's for sure going to be there. Then it was a question of who 2, 3, 4, and 5. If there would have been someone here ready at 7:30, waiting for a class like Dr. Presby, it would have been Sheldon. Can't think of a more appropriate way to honor his memory than to bring in scientists. Sorry, I can't read all those. Everything is from the doctor's resume, but so tremendous pleasure and honor for Sheldon to hear from Dr. Presby. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really feel that half my talk has been taken. That was a wonderful introduction to finding God in a scientific world. And that's what I'd like to address this evening. Let me just add my thank yous to everyone. It's the first time we've been in Manalapan. We've heard the name so many times, but first time we've been here. So I thank you for giving us that opportunity, and I'm really overwhelmed with the community and our turnout tonight. So I thank you all for that. And I thank everyone that came over before my talk and reminded me that I know them. So I thank you all for knowing me and keeping that in mind. Thank you so much. So what are we going to talk about? I can't read my resume either. I don't understand half of it, but it's all there. And do you have any questions on my resume? No? Okay, good. So, in the professional world, I'm a physicist. I've been leading a research and development group at Bell Laboratories for some 36 years, and then was looking after a company that Lucent invested in. After we spent $500 million, the company went under. So it's a pleasure to spend that much money. And then my life now is one that's devoted to speaking. I speak for the Gateways organization. I speak for universities quite a bit, and I give shiurim classes almost every night of the week in our hometown of Highland Park. And one of my loves is combining that science that I grew up with and that I emphasized, and Torah. And I feel there's nothing more important than a Torah perspective on life. And if one can gain that perspective, one really, really has everything. And unfortunately, there is just so much confusion out there with regards to religion and science. Unfortunately, many people have a problem with science and religion and think, oh, gee, how can you ever be a scientist and be religious? The best scientists are atheists. And so I'd like to counter all of that by looking at finding God in the scientific world. But let's first establish that we're in a scientific world. And I met some people just, again, before my talk that were in the scientific world. So, we're all there. We're certainly in a scientific age. We're surrounded by technology, right? We got here tonight by Waze. I don't know what we'd do without Waze. But my wife used to be my map reader. And I don't know if anyone else remembers maps, but they used to print these things. And my wife would sit there, she would make a right turn, a left turn. And half the time, who knew where one was? But Waze has done it. Amazing, amazing technology. And that's just, one example. We're surrounded with, microchips in everything. And everything we look at and everything we talk to and things that talk to us are all electronic in nature. And in fact, there's now a generation that's being raised on technology. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm amazed. I've seen a great-grandchild, 2 years old, with an iPhone, flipping through YouTube videos, and I was amazed. My wife said, "What are they holding?" I said, "Oh, that's an iPhone." She said, "What's that?" And here's her 2-year-old great-grandchild flipping through and being very adept with it. It's an amazing, amazing item. So it's really a new generation, but it comes with its challenges as well. I was once speaking to a bunch of boys that were over my home, and I asked them, we were talking science and a little bit of religion. I tried to make it more religion than science. And I asked them, I said, hey, tell me, what was created on the third day? And one boy said, oh, I'll Google it. and he pulled out his iPhone. These are high school boys. He pulled out his iPhone. And he started Googling it. I said, wait. I said, you see that book over there? It's called a Chumash. It's called a Chumash. You think you could find it in there? He said, no, I'm going to Google it. And this is what we've come to. It's a new generation, an amazing, amazing generation. Again, being raised on technology, being raised in a digital world. What shul, and I'm afraid to look around, doesn't have an atomic clock? Right? And you better start on the second when that goes. So technology, really, really surrounds us. In fact, my own field is fiber optics. I'm one of the original investigators in that field. I've sort of amassed like 200 patents in that, thank God. And the world is now surrounded with optical fiber that allows you to push a button on your computer and send hundreds of messages to anyone, anywhere in the world. So science and scientists have really made a mark on the world in a very, very major way. In fact, it's come to the point where scientists are respected and science is respected. Look what science can do and look what scientists know. In fact, the authority of science and the authority of scientists is something that unfortunately has replaced religion. If you look at surveys that are taken and people are asked, who do you trust? Who would you expect to be at the top of that list? Well, you say, gee, our local rabbi maybe, right? Clergymen should be up there. They're not. You know where they rank? I'm not going to say. But they're somewhere on that list, and it's not at the top. Who's at the top? Who's number one on the trusted list? Scientists. So people trust scientists, and people trust science. And why shouldn't they trust science? Look what it's given us. And look at the wonder drugs that are out there, and look at the wonder cures that are out there, and look at all of the marvelous, marvelous things that we attribute to science. But the attitude of, you know what, science can do anything, and scientists know everything, is a very, very dangerous one. In fact, scientists and very major scientists have claimed that, you know what, we do know everything. And you know what, there is no room in the world, chas v'shalom, that means God forbid, for God himself. All you need is science, and science can explain everything, and science can, look what it does. Trust in science, and you don't have to believe in God. It's an amazing thing. I'm embarrassed to say that I subscribe to 2 publications, Scientific American and Science News, and that's it. And there's an ad every month in Scientific American, one of the noted scientific journals, that is promoted by atheists. And it essentially has that message: trust us. Trust us. We're reasonable, we're reasoned, and what is God needed for? In fact, scientists, and the very latest of scientists, one passed away not that long ago, a few months ago, Stephen Hawking. Have you heard of him? An avowed atheist. And he said, there's no need for God. I can explain everything. Just give me gravity and I'll give you the universe. What would you ask, Stephen? Where'd you get the gravity from, Stephen? And, just give me gravity. I'll give you the universe. There's another fellow, a Jewish fellow, Lawrence Krauss. Lawrence Krauss, a physicist, said the very same thing. I can give you the universe. You don't need God. And where did Lawrence Krauss get the universe from? From these virtual particles that are popping in and out of existence. And Lawrence Krauss said, you know what the universe is? There are all of these particles, and they all pop together, and the universe is nothing but a quantum burp. Think about that. And again, a avowed atheist. So scientists have had a terrible negative influence on people, and because people trust them, and if they say it, then hey, maybe that's the case. And really, what I'd like to address this evening is the fact that no way is this the case. In fact, it is just the very, very opposite. And science today is something that is affording us, I claim, the greatest of all religious experiences. Science today is giving us a real feeling and a real revelation of God's presence. It is something that we see in the Torah that was given to the Mitzrayim, the Egyptians, by the plagues, where God said, they will now see, they will know that I'm here in the land. And this realization is something that is truly coming from science itself. And I'd like to demonstrate that for all of the time that you have the patience for. But as the rabbi said before, one has to open one's eyes to see it. Let me tell you an opening of the eyes story. It's one of my favorite stories. It's about, ever hear of Homer Simpson? No, I should have mentioned him in shul, but there's a Homer Simpson episode where Homer is praying to God. And he says to God, God, you know what? Everything is just so good in my life. Everything is just going right. God, I want to make a deal with you. Leave it that way, and I'll never bother you again. And God, if you agree with me, do nothing. Do absolutely nothing. And sure enough, nothing. It's quiet. And Homer says, God, thank you so much for agreeing with me. I'm so grateful. I'd like to give you an offering. My favorite food, milk and chocolate cookies. And God, here it is. And God, you know what? If you want, I'll do you a favor. I'll eat it for you. And if you want me to do that, do nothing. Do nothing. And sure enough, there's a boom of thunder. And Homer says, oh, gee, what was that? I guess, they're expecting rain. That must be the start of the rain. He says, God, thank you so much for not giving me any sign. And he reaches for the milk and cookies when the earth starts shaking. There's an earthquake. And Homer is swaying along with the earthquake. And he says, oh, this is really strange. I knew we lived on that fault line and this was coming, and here it is. God, thank you so much for not giving me any sign. And again, he reaches for the cookies and the milk when the TV goes on. And on the TV, there's an announcer discussing the dangers of overeating chocolate cookies and drinking milk. And Homer says, oh, God, oh, this is unbelievable. That storm that's coming through, look what it did. It turned on my TV. It made the announcer speak about my favorite food. Thank you so much for not giving me any sign. And then there's a booming voice from heaven that says, Homer, you dummy, this is God. Don't you dare touch those cookies and drink that milk. And now Homer's really shaken. And he looks up and he says, oh, I knew it. When I was in college, I got into these DRUGS, and I know they affected my mind. And every once in a while, I have a hallucination, and I just had one. God, thank you so much for not giving me any sign. And he dives down and eats the cookies and drinks them. Now, think about it. Think about it. There's a little bit of Homer, in all of us. Did you ever say, God, just give me a sign? I'll shape up. Yeah. You said that? Yeah, God, it doesn't have to be a big one, just a little sign. And God, just show me where you are, and I'll really perform as you would like. And what happens? My claim is we're surrounded. We're surrounded by signs from God. We're surrounded by his presence, but we have to look as Homer didn't, and to see all those items. And I'd like to bring a few examples of those signs where we could see God in the world, and feel free to comment and ask if you don't understand anything. Look puzzled, and I'll look back puzzled, and we'll see what we can do. So I want to cover a few areas of science that are my favorites. One is cosmology. Does that mean anything? No? I spoke in Texas once, and the title of my talk was Cool Cosmology. And a woman came over to me before my talk and said, Dr. Presby, why are you speaking about makeup? I said, no. I said, that's cosmetology. Cosmetology. This is cosmology. So I want to look at just a little bit at cosmology, which is really the study of the universe. What the universe is, what it's doing here, what we're doing here, where it's going, and when it's going to get there, and all things related to that. Cosmology has taken major turns over the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and it was one area where people truly had a major problem with science and religion. And that problem was one of our grand universe. Where did it come from? By the way, do you know how big the universe is? How big? Big. Yeah, it's pretty big. Yeah, it's pretty big. It's huge. That isn't even a word for it. And they help. Let me just give you a little bit of a feel. It'll take 30 seconds just to get a little feel for the universe. But you know why Rosh Hashanah is coming? And the goal of Rosh Hashanah is to recognize God as Melech HaOlam, as King of the universe. But how do you do that when you don't know what the universe is? So let's just get a teeny bit of a feel for the universe. Anybody into astronomy? You're gonna be. So just 2 minutes for a astronomical tour. We live on a planet called terrific, and we go around a star called the Great. How far away is the sun? Far. No, come on, miles. Okay, yeah, it's far. It's far. Yeah, 93 million miles. How long would it take you to get to the sun? 8 minutes if you were light, if you traveled at the speed of light. If you traveled at the speed of a jet plane, at the speed of sound, it would take you only 20 years to get to the sun. But you have food and what have you. But light takes 8 minutes, which means what? Things happening on the sun now happened 8 minutes ago when you see it. So for example, if your rabbi was up there holding up a sign, Rabbi Rosenthal's up on the sun, and he's holding up a flag that says Jewish Learning Center, he's no longer there. He's no longer there. He was there 8 minutes ago, and he's no longer there for lots of reasons. But one of those reasons is that it took 8 minutes for that light to get here. But isn't that amazing? You can look through your telescope and you see him there, and you say, but he is there. That's the finite time of propagation of light. So the sun is pretty far away. There are a lot more suns, a lot more stars in our galaxy called the Milky Way, which is part of the universe, called the Milky Way. Is it kosher, the Milky Way? Okay. And how many stars are there in our Milky Way? Billions. The latest estimate I saw is like 400 billion stars. That's a lot of stars. A billion is a big number, small number. Your salary. It's a big number. If you did nothing but count to 1 billion, how long would it take you? Assuming you can count a number a second. How many seconds? 1 billion seconds. Absolutely brilliant. You're a math major. It would take 1 billion seconds. And 1 billion seconds is equal to how many days? Yeah, I have a calculator. And you find out that it's how many weeks, how many years? It's equal to 33 1/3 years. So you'd have to sit here counting for 33 years to count to 1 billion. It's a big number. And there are more than 400 billion stars in our galaxy. And at one time, and just not that many tens of years ago, it was thought that that's all there is to the universe. That's it. That's it. It's our galaxy, the stars around it, and nothing else. The next closest star to us is called Alpha Centauri. And how far away is Alpha Centauri? You start 4.5 light years away, which means if you texted someone on Alpha Centauri, it would take how long for them to get your text? 4.5 years. And you text them, meet me at the Jewish Learning Center. And they text you back, where's that? So 9 years have gone by. And then you say, and what time? Oh, 13.5 years. You don't want to text anyone in Alpha Centauri. It's just not worth it. And that's the next closest star. And there are 400 billion more. It turns out that some of those spots of light that you see are not just stars in our galaxy, but there are other galaxies. How many galaxies do you think there are? The latest estimate I saw is close to 1 trillion galaxies. 1 trillion in our universe. The universe is beyond our comprehension. The next closest galaxy, remember, a galaxy is a collection of billions and billions of stars. The next closest galaxy to us is Andromeda. Terrific. Anyone here from Andromeda? Yeah, good. You want to stand up? Generally, in a group this size, you'll find at least one alien from Andromeda. How'd you get here? Oh, okay. So Andromeda is how long did it take you? A while, yeah. And guess how far Andromeda is? The next closest galaxy to us out of the trillion of galaxies. Guess how far? Andromeda is 2.5 million light years away. Million light years, which means if you texted someone on Andromeda, they'd get your text in 2.5 million years. And if they responded, 5 million years. It's amazing you made it. And you're so young. It's great. 5 million years for a round trip to Andromeda. So when people tell you I was visited by aliens, just smile and what have you. It's a long trip. And that is one galaxy that is the closest one to us. And we have how many more? 1 trillion more that are out there. So how big is the universe?
Infinite.
We don't know. We just don't know. We don't know. And when we say God is Melech HaOlam, is King of the universe, what does one have in mind now when you daven in every bracha that you make? I can't even comprehend. I can't even comprehend this item. Where did it come from? Where did this universe come from? You know, it's something that you may have discussed on your first date. You know, you're out there, you know, on a starry night, and you say, "Hey, did you ever think of where the universe came from?" And then your date says, "What?" You know, where did it come from? Where did it come from? Till not that long ago, it was thought that the universe was always here. This was, in the physical terms, the steady state theory of the universe. It was always, always here. How could anything of this magnitude ever have come about? And that was a serious, serious problem for us as observant, committed Jews. Why? Where do we believe? What are the first two words of the Torah in any language? Bereshis bara, which literally means what? In the beginning, it was created. We believe it was created. And if someone would have said that just something like 50 years ago, they would have been told by a group of scientists, that's crazy. That's wrong. No one believes that. There is no scientist that believes that. The universe was always here. And if that's what your Bible tells you, if that's what you call the Torah tells you, it's wrong. And if the first two words are wrong, how can you trust anything else in it? And so many Jews, unfortunately, were lost to Judaism from arguments like that. And those arguments go on today, not in that area, but in the same vein of saying what? We know. We're scientists. Trust us. We know. And what you believe doesn't agree with us. So you're wrong and we're right. Well, guess what happened? Guess what happened? What happened, and not that long ago, was one where that was turned upside down. In fact, I was part of this. I carpooled with one of the Nobel Prize winners. I got the Nobel Prize for something known as the Big Bang, which is now Big Bang Cosmology, which is evidence of creation, evidence of the creation of the universe. And a individual called Bob Wilson and Arno Penzias made that discovery at a place none other than Bell Labs. Let's hear it for Bell Labs. I carpooled with Arno Penzias, and one day I picked him up, and Arno said, "Guess what?" I said, "Arno, I think I know what you're going to tell me, but I want to give you the nachas, the pleasure of telling me." He said, "I won the Nobel Prize." I said, "Arno, mazel tov, that's wonderful." He says, "Well, you know what that means for our carpool?" I said, "No, what does it mean?" He said, "Carpool is over." I said, "Carpool is over, why?" He said, "I have my own chauffeur." I said, "You have your own chauffeur? That's terrific. He can pick me up too. And Arno, I'll sit in the back. You can sit in the front. We live 5 blocks away." So he said, "Herman, I don't think you know what it means to win the Nobel Prize." I said, "Arno, educate me." He said, "It means you travel alone with your own chauffeur." So we broke up. He went on to become vice president of research at Bell Labs. And I went on to speak for places like the Jewish Learning Center. Who won? Yeah. Well, everyone won in their own way. So what was this Big Bang cosmology? Essentially, without going into the stories behind it, essentially, Big Bang cosmology says that the universe came about at some finite time in the past. And in fact, when this first came out, scientists were amazed. And at conferences, statements were made. It looks like scientists have come to agree with the first 2 words of the Bible of it was created in the beginning. Just an amazing, amazing item. So now there is no one. I shouldn't say no one. There's still a flat Earth society. There's still people that believe in a flat Earth. Not too many members, and membership dues is very cheap, but there still is a flat Earth society. But right now, there is no one that does not believe in the fact that the universe came about at some finite time in the past. An amazing, amazing item. And it just took away that objection. And in fact, that is the only serious conflict that I feel ever existed between science and religion. If you're aware of others that bother you, just wait and feel free to ask about them. There's no conflict. In fact, we know our sages tell us that God looked into the Torah and used that as the blueprint for the universe. There can't be any conflict in the universe and in and anything that one finds in the Torah. So, what do we see from cosmology? We truly see God's hand, we see God's presence, and the world as a whole sees that the universe was created. It came about. But yet they still try. And they still try to avoid that third word of the Torah. What's that third word? Elohim. That's where we say it came from. When it comes to Elohim, the world shudders, and they just can't take that God word. They don't want to see it. I had that experience. Let me tell you a personal story where I saw this so directly. Some of my interesting patents, and I have a group of patents that deal with getting light into an optical fiber. Should I give you a 1-minute introduction to optical fibers?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Right now, if you make a phone call, say you have a phone, and I'm not embarrassed to show you my phone. Would you believe it? I'm responsible for this technology, and look what I use. That's another story, and I'll tell you all about it. It takes over lives. It takes over lives. So you make a phone call. Yeah. So you have your DUMB phone. How do you and you want to call Israel? What happens? Tell me what happens. What happens? Hello, Israel. What goes from here to Israel? How does it go? Tin can. Right. Tin can. So from here there are microwaves that go from here to a cell tower. That's probably somewhere in Manalapan. And from that cell tower, there are cables that go to a central office. That's probably somewhere in Marlborough. And from that central office, there are more cables that go to a bigger central office that may be in New Brunswick. And from there, there are other cables, fiber cables, that go to a big facility. Let's just use one, AT&T, that's located in New York City. And from there, there are cables with fibers in it, I'll tell you what they are in a moment, that go into the ocean and surround the world with drop-off points on every continent, every country around the world. What's in those cables are hair-thin wires that are made of glass, exactly the same size as a strand of hair. But made of glass. So picture a strand of your hair. If I was able to, I'd pull one out and show you. Made of glass, and it goes for miles and miles. What's so great about that? Well, what's so great about it is put light in one end, it'll bounce back and forth zillions of times till it comes out the other end. What's so great about that? What's so great about that is you could put every conversation now going on between New Jersey and the rest of the world on one such strand of glass. That's the amazing information carrying capacity of light. And so the dream was always to get and use that as communication. But how do you get light into this strand of hair? Well, you say, big deal, stick it up to the light, and the light will go in. If you do that, you know how much light goes in? Zero. So you say, well, pick a different light bulb, take a teeny little laser, and stick that up to the fiber. You know how much light goes in? A few percent. Not good. Not good. You want more light. So this became a major item, and countries around the world, notably Japan, made it a huge effort to try to get more light into a fiber to make this technology go. And every year at conferences, they'd report another few percent. Till after almost 10 years, they reported 40% of light into an optical fiber, which was pretty good. We weren't happy. We tackled the problem. And after 2 weeks, we were able to get 100% of the light into an optical fiber. Yeah, it took 2 weeks, And we kept it private. We kept it a secret till we could get it into product and make use of it. And once we announced it, it was interesting news. I got calls from these little journals, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And then I got a call from the American Physical Society that said, Dr. Presby, we want to do an interview. Can we come to your office? We only have one question. I said, fine. Then they came, and what's your question? Where did you ever get the idea to get all the light into an optical fiber? I said, that's such a good question. No one ever asked me that, even my wife. And you know what? I'll tell you on one condition. You write it up exactly as I tell you. Do you agree? And I said, of course. We're honest physicists like you. Of course we'll do it. I said, what if I told you the idea came from God, it came from him? I cannot make the faces that I saw in my office that day. I thought they were going to pass out. And they said, Dr. Presby, stop kidding around. Where'd you get the idea? I said, I told you where I got the idea. I'll elaborate on it. Will you write it up like that? They said, we don't believe you. Where did you get the idea? I said, again, I told you. And if you want more, I'll tell you more. But again, you have to agree to write it up like that. They said, no way will we do that. You have a world reputation. If we ever do that, you're finished. People will think you are C-R-A-Z-Y. You'll know there are words I don't like to say. And that you're a crackpot, and they'll never trust you again. It's for your own good. Where'd you get the idea? I said, interview's over, and that was it. Now, where did I get the idea from? Where? From just where I said. It's a pasuk, it's a verse in the Torah. And that verse tells us, Kihu, let me just give it to you in Hebrew, and if you look at that God gives you the strength to be strong. And if you look at the Aramaic translation of that, Unclus says that God gives you the ideas to be successful in life. An amazing, amazing item. Ideas come from God as well. And they couldn't take that. Why couldn't they take that? Because that brings God into the world. And science doesn't want to see that. They want to explain everything, and they don't want God in the picture. They want to explain the universe with gravity. They want to explain the universe with virtual particles, but don't mention God. Don't mention God. It is so hard to avoid, and it's so hard not to see. Let me just give you another example. I don't know how much time we should. As much as I want. Okay, good. Chakras. No. Let me give you another example that is, I feel, just absolutely overwhelming and a showstopper. I feel it is such a showstopper that one has to be out of one's mind not to ignore this item. Let me ask you, and it's in the area of biology, the area of microbiology. What are we made out of? Cells. We're made out of cells. How many cells in your body before you ate? Very good, very good. A trillion's a good guess, but the current number that science says is 100 trillion. That's a lot of cells. That's a lot of cells. Some people have more than others, but roughly 100 trillion, that's enough. It's on the average, that's enough. In every cell of your body, there's a nucleus. A few exceptions. Red blood cells don't have a nucleus, but every other cell has a nucleus. And what's inside that nucleus? Your DNA. What is your DNA? Your DNA is a molecule that has all of the instructions to make you. It tells every cell in your body what to be, where to go, what to do, what proteins to make. It is the code of life. What is that DNA molecule? It's just a molecule. It's a molecule consisting of 4 nucleotides that are called A, C, T, and G. And their arrangement of those 4, A, C, A, T, G, blah, 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 blah. And there are 4 billion of these in that molecule. That molecule fits inside your nucleus. That nucleus is something like a few microns in diameter. And this strand of DNA, which if you unwound it, would stretch 2 meters long. 2 meters, that's something like 6 feet long. That's unreal. And that is folded in such an unbelievably brilliant way that it fits inside this nucleus, and that's in every cell in your body. Do you believe that? This has nothing to do with Torah and religion. This is pure science that's agreed upon by every scientist in the world. It's something that is unreal. And this is the instructions that is contained in every living creature, every living entity in the world. Where did it come from? Where did DNA come from?
Gravity.
Gravity, right. Yeah. I thought you'd say virtual particles. Where did it come from? So open up a biology book, and you know what you see? The very first chapter shows you planet Earth, and planet Earth is surrounded with a primordial soup. The primordial soup, that's like chili. It's a watery chili. And then you turn the page, and coming out of that primordial soup is DNA. Is DNA. And from there, it's easy. From there, things just grow till you get monkeys, and then you get you and what have you, coming out of it. Oh, that's science. That's what scientists say. It must be. That's where it came from. 1 second. How did this information-rich molecule do it? How? Information doesn't come from nowhere. In fact, it's one of the most difficult items to generate information. It's not a vacuous item. Where did DNA come from? It doesn't come by itself. And not only that, one finds DNA in the earliest traces of life here on Earth. They find rocks with evidence of single-celled creatures that have DNA, and those rocks are over 3.5 billion years old. And the age of planet Earth, according to their calculations, is just on the order of 4.5 billion years old. So life was here at the outset with DNA. And you can't say, oh, it took billions of years for DNA to develop, and through evolution and to do what we see it did. That time isn't there. It was there from the get-go. Where'd it come from? I consider this a showstopper. Just a showstopper. There is absolutely no reasonable explanation for this in science, and there's only one explanation. It was there from the get-go. It was there from evidence, from God as the grand designer of life, and who brought us the brilliance of DNA. It's the language of God. So from microbiology, from cosmology to microbiology, let me just bring one more example where one sees God so clearly in the world. And scientists, and with all of these, there are stories. There was the gravity story. There's the virtual particle story. With DNA, there's the evolution story. Of course, it came about that way. Oh, well, it didn't start with DNA. There was first RNA. It was an RNA world. Where did that come from? Well, it came from rocks. Oh, it came from the primordial soup. Oh, it came from this. No one knows where it came from, but there are stories, and one guesses with those stories. There's one story. What's that one story? Voracious bara Elohim. Let me just give you one more clear evidence of God in the world, and that is, I think we live in an absolutely perfect world, perfect, designed for life, designed for us. Not just in the grand sense, namely that we live in a Goldilocks zone, that we're here in a safety zone in our own solar system. We're here in a place where water can exist. And when scientists look at these exoplanets for life, what are they looking for? Water. So we're in that perfect place, but our own solar system is in the perfect place in our galaxy. In the center of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, is a massive black hole. Don't get scared. That black hole is 4 million sun masses, 4 million suns compacted, and that's in the center of our galaxy. If we were closer, we are like 2/3 out. If we were closer, forget it. If we were further, forget it. We're in that perfect place for life. And not only that, but every detail of every physical constant here on Earth is absolutely perfect, and if changed to the slightest degree, if the charge on the electron, if the mass of the proton, if any of the physical constants were changed by the smallest amount, life would not exist. And not only that, planet Earth wouldn't exist, nor would the galaxies, nor would the universe exist as we know it. Everything is so finely tuned. The estimate is, by physicists themselves, that tuning is accurate to 1 part in the 10 to the some thousandth power. just to give you a feel for that number, the number of particles in the whole universe is 10 to the 84th. 10 to the 1000th power, forget. And that's how accurate that tuning had to be originally to generate what we see now. And physicists say, well, how do they explain it? How do you explain it? How? There's a story. And you know what the story is? Something that's now propagated, known as the multiverse. Have you heard of the multiverse? You know what the multiverse is? We are one of an infinite number of universes. And guess what? Ours got it right. We got it right. There's another one out there that got it wrong, and no one exists there. And you know what? There's another one out there, and well, they got it wrong too. And you know what? There's an infinity out there. They all got it wrong. We got it right. And that's why we're here. This is the multiverse. Oh, where are these other universes? Where are they? Oh, well, they're in other dimensions. Oh, where are these other dimensions? Oh, we can't be in touch with them. What is it? A story. This is a story. A story. But this is how far scientists go to try to explain items that to us are so clear. So clear. And there's no evidence for any of these items that is being proposed for a scientific explanation for this. But again, what is it? Voracious bara. And it's God's hand that we see, and that is there directing and controlling all that there is in the universe. It's an amazing item, and so God's presence is there. And we just brought a few examples again from cosmology, from microbiology, even from the fine-tuning of the universe and the world of ideas, where we see God's presence sitting there. What do we have to do to see it? Just open your eyes, and God is there surrounding us. Got it?
Why do you think that is that scientists feel the way they do?
Very good. That's such a good question. And I've worked with a lot of scientists. And how come? You'd expect scientists to be jumping with joy to see these things. If one is really interested in the issue, there's a interesting book by a non-Jewish scientist called Darwin's Black Box by a Michael Behe, a biologist. And he asked that question. And he says that scientists should be overjoyed. And one would expect scientists to be the most religious people in the world. And they're not. They're mostly atheists. How come? And it's an interesting item. My own feeling is, on the basic point, it's an item that our sages have discussed, and it's one that I think everybody truly feels themselves. People don't like to be told what to do. They just don't want to be told. I once spoke with Bob Wilson, the one who got the Nobel Prize with Arno Penzias for the Big Bang, and I said, Bob, you can explain everything about the universe from the Big Bang on down. But Bob, what gave rise to the Big Bang? What do you think Bob answered me? I don't know. It would have been a wonderful answer. He didn't. He said, Herman, I refuse to think about it. I refuse to think about it. Why? Why does he refuse to think about it? Because if you truly are honest and you think about it, you see that voracious bara is correct, and you will come to the conclusion that the world is here under the control of God himself.
And can it be explained through science? Maybe that's what it is.
No, science just says, you know what? Yeah, science says we just want to see things from a materialistic perspective, and that's it. And God doesn't fit into that. But we know there's more. There's more, and science is coming to realize that there's a lot more in the world that is not things you can touch, see, hear, and feel, but that goes beyond those items. Yeah.
Well, in science, even science doesn't follow science. The very small and the very big, science doesn't follow science. Like even the fixed laws of physics don't apply to the very small and the very large.
Correct. But there are other laws that apply there. So, for example, the rise of quantum mechanics that applies to the very small is its own branch. That's been very, very successful, right, in explaining those items. Where it doesn't apply, and it's a very good point that you're making, is in the period of creation. In other words, we can't extrapolate back to creation and say, gee, this is what must have been then. So science does have its limits. Yes?
This might sound like a silly question.
No, there is no question that is silly. None.
Are there any, in the unexplored multiverse, are there any stars or planets similar to this planet Earth that would support human life? And what's your
Okay, so let's leave the multiverse out, but our own universe. In other words, our physical universe that we see. Are there other planets out there with life on those planets, right? There's something called the Drake equation, which looks at the probability of there being life elsewhere in the universe. And you know what? That probability is extremely high, extremely high. The only problem is, where are they? There's been a program now 50 years old called Seti, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI. You can look that up. And it's been going on, searching and searching. They've now gone out something like 10,000 light years out searching for signs, any signal or what have you. Guess what they found? Gornish. And this Drake equation says there should have been thousands. There should have been thousands of civilizations or whatever that should have shown up already, and within that distance that it can cover. And nothing's been seen. From a Torah perspective, from Yaakov Kamenetsky, one of the great sages of the past generation, said that there may be something, there may be some life, but there is absolutely no intelligent life that has bechira, that has free choice anywhere else in the universe. The Talmud says that every individual is obligated to say, in Hebrew, Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam. The universe was created for me. It was created for us. There's one Torah that God has given us, and we're unique in the universe.
What is the probability of our universe being the way it is, the perfection?
That's what we said. That's 10 to the some thousandth power. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's very improbable.
Not only is that improbable, but you just look at smaller probabilities of life coming about from inanimate items. Those probabilities just don't make it. They just don't make it. Yes.
So, as you were growing up, you studied Torah.
Correct.
And you also studied science.
Correct.
And you studied probably languages and other.
That's correct.
Too. And sometimes these things have interrelation. Sometimes they work on their own plane. And I presume that your parents also encouraged you to tackle each one to the best of your ability, not to forget who you are. But on the same token, that there is this, like you just said, the world's created for me. The two pieces of paper you're supposed to keep in your pocket. One of them is the world is created for me, or I forget
Correct.
how it actually says. But what I want to get to is this.
Yes.
You said you're a great grandfather. Call it Kabbalah. It's terrific. My sister lives in a place called Muncie.
I heard of it.
You might have heard of it.
Yes. We used to live there.
Okay. And everybody at Muncie's great at turning out Torah scholars. And so a few people hit the stock market, and then it's raining gold. And I told my nephews, who's going to law school? Who's going to law school? Who's going to? Are any of your and these guys are now having children of their own? Are any of your friends going to medical school? Did any of your friends go to medical school? Furnish.
Yeah. So your question is?
So my question is, how does somebody there is the little bit of the culture comp. You have the atheists that atheists that look at you and they say that you're Michigan. I can't write this in the report. You have to tell me what your sources are. And you have the other side of it. You have the very frum that think that the scientists are also Michigan. I don't know how you get them to be on the same.
Well, so let me comment on all your points, which are major items. Let me tell you about a grandson-in-law that we have. We have a grandson-in-law who went to 3 yeshivas, went to the Mir Yeshiva in Jerusalem, and just graduated from the U of P law school. He went there directly from the Mir Yeshiva. The Mir Yeshiva recognizes that a background in Talmud is so valuable, and it's one of the top law schools in the country. He just took the bar exam 4 weeks ago, and got a top job with a firm in New York. So here he is. Here he is. We have another grandson who spent a year in Israel in the IDF, and totally committed. He was doing kiruv on the bases in Israel. We were there visiting once, and he said, Bubby and Zadie, please bring me some menorahs. It's Hanukkah. I want to make sure that the boys on the bases light them. And from guy, and you know what? He just graduated Cardozo Law School. He took the bar exam as well, and he's working in cybersecurity for a law firm. So you know what? There are lots of stories. There are lots of stories, and thank God there are lots of people that recognize, you know what? I have a responsibility in life, and I have responsibility to a family. And thank God there are lots of people that recognize the value of Torah, how important Torah is, and they say, you know what? I want to support Torah, and I want to be there for my family. I'll be there for my kids. I'll be there for those that so that they can spend time in Torah. And that will be my function. And I know the world exists on the basis of Torah, and I want to see that that gets supported. So there's no dichotomy. We're in an integrated whole. And some people choose one path, some choose the other.
Even like when my kids went to high school, they're in a little Abe Lincoln school, the little Abe Lincoln lot. There's no labs.
So again, there are schools that do have, and there are schools that don't. There are differences of approach and differences of opinion. Not everyone is going to be the same, and not every school is going to have the same standards. Let's go to this side of the room. Yes.
I personally have to comment because to me there is a dichotomy. I have a wonderful doctor who's very strong, and I said to him, "How do you handle evolution?"
Oh my. And he kept you as a patient?
It's wonderful. And he said for him personally, he chooses to believe in evolution and carbon dating. And he said, I can't refute the science.
Yeah.
On the other hand, he also believes in Torah.
Yes.
So I said, how do you believe in
Yes.
both at the same time? So
Right.
that's my question.
How does he, you have to ask him that.
I'm asking you.
I don't believe in both. I do not. I believe there is no evidence from a science perspective for the validity of evolution. And that's why I call it evolution. It has done more damage for more people in terms of their commitment and belief. That people like that, and I've met many firm people, they want to say the following. Of course, scientists, they're no dummies. They believe in evolution. It must be. But you know how? God is behind it. God caused all of these items to happen, and therefore they satisfy themselves by saying, I can be from, believe in God, and believe in science, and believe in evolution. I feel that that is totally wrong. Why? If evolution does not stand on its own from a science perspective, then don't make it something that God has to do. It's embarrassing for God to say, hey, he's doing something that doesn't make sense scientifically.
So my question to you is, do you discount evolution for animals too?
I certainly do. And that's another whole story, and if we have another 3 months, we can go through that. Absolutely. I have a presentation just on evolution.
That's a major problem.
Well, it should not be a problem. It should not be a problem. There is no scientific evidence for evolution, and anyone that is totally honest will see that. It gets propagated that evolution is the only way, and this is the way. You know why? Because people do not want to accept that third word. They don't want to accept God, and they don't want to accept responsibility, and they don't want to accept that, you know what, I'm accountable for my actions. They'd much rather say the world is what it is.
Okay, so you were denying evolution.
I'm not denying, but from a scientific perspective, not from a Jewish belief perspective. I do not discuss evolution from a Torah. There is no evidence. In fact, there is evidence against evolution, scientific evidence.
So piggybacking off of the discussion, what is the Jewish perspective on the Paleozoic era and dinosaur fossils?
There certainly are dinosaur fossils. You can't deny that, and there they are in museums. What's the problem?
So I think there was conflict with dating.
Oh, dating. No problem. one has to ask, how old is the universe? Is what it comes down to. How old is the universe? And that's the second, question that people have found problems with. And people say, well, the Torah says it's 57, 78 this year, going on 79. No way does the Torah say that. No way. What does the Torah say? If someone would ask me, and I feel that this is the proper answer, Dr. Presby, how old is the universe? I would say the universe is 5,778 years plus 6 God days of creation. We have absolutely no idea what those 6 God days of creation are. Absolutely none. None. And those 6 God days of creation could be anything. Could be anything. And I see absolutely no problem with that.
And then, like, the term day, is that defined as 24 hours, or Torah doesn't really have a day?
No, but one finds day used in many different ways throughout the Torah. One finds day as a period of time, and one finds day as 24 hours. What is it? The Ramban Nachmanides says that we do not understand one word in the creation episode in Maaseh Bereshis. It's something that the Talmud tells us is Sisrei Torah, our secrets of the Torah. We don't understand it. And to say, oh, I understand it, no way, we don't understand it. And we accept it as what? As a given of non-understanding. We don't. And I see no conflict at all. There are 6 God days of creation, and what they were, we have no idea. Okay?
How do you regard Darwin's studies? How do you regard the studies that go on in Galapagos science?
You know what those studies are? Those studies are, how do you spell ridiculous? Those studies, look at Darwin's finches. Those were the classic items. Darwin's finches. What were Darwin's finches? Darwin traveled, and this is where he came up with all of his theories. Darwin said, look at this island, it's isolated. And look at the birds on this island, look at the birds on another island, and look at their beaks. They have different beaks, right? And so these are different species. No way. There's been an argument for hundreds of years as to what defines a species. Darwin says these are different species, and they evolved for that. You know what happens? They developed longer beaks when food supplies were different and they needed them for other supplies. And when the food supply returned to normal, the beaks went down very quickly within a generation or two. These are adaptive items that are built into the genome. The genome is such a powerful item. And right now, there's an enormous study going on, which is the subject of another talk, called Epigenetics, that just absolutely is mind-boggling. Are items that's contained in the Torah that science is now first discovering. And they are items that show that all of those things that were considered to be evolutionary items can be explained very nicely and very simply in epigenetic ways. So we don't get too excited about these things. Wait, let's give someone else a chance.
So this is a great speech, by the way. I really enjoyed it. Just wanted to add.
Would you put that in writing?
I can even text it.
Okay,
It's
fine.
going to take a couple of million years.
Yeah.
But just to add to your point about God's day, in the Torah, the Jewish day has no fixed length. And if you want to see God's day, we can observe God in the length of the day. I'm a commuter. I have a 55-minute drive home on Fridays. And right now, today, the Jewish day is moving 11 minutes a week in the opposite direction, making my commute in the winter when I have to get home at 4:15 rather than 7 o'clock. The Jewish day has moved. It's moved several hours. There is no.
And try it through the Lincoln Tunnel on the helix.
Forget about it.
Yes.
Explain climate control in terms of size control.
You mean in terms of is there what's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Yeah, so there's a huge debate, and that huge debate takes place in science. Whether global warming, is something which is scientifically such or not, and it's become a huge political item with sides and scientists on both sides. It was not that long ago. It was something like 20 years ago where it was felt that we're entering a new ice age. and temperatures had plummeted, and it was predicted that an ice age was coming. And now it's turned around, and we're in a global warming age, so they say. If there's evidence, interesting. But you know what? There are cycles, and those cycles have gone on for thousands of years. The only question is, what are we contributing to that cycle? And there's no doubt that we're contributing something. And the question is, how much of it are we contributing? I just saw an article, in fact, in that famous Scientific American that has that terrible ad in it, that said that the fires, the wildfires now going on out west, are adding more global warming than anything that man has done in that area. In other words, and that's
California keeps the wildlife.
okay, yeah, and that is just a natural phenomena. So it's not so clear what's going on. It's not so clear, and from a scientific perspective, it's not so clear what we're doing. From a Torah perspective, if man was doing something harmful to the environment, one is responsible to take care of that and to do something about it. The Medrash tells us that when God created the world, he took Adam on a tour of planet Earth, and he said, hey, be careful, be careful. This is your world. It's the world I created. Don't destroy it. If you destroy it, there'll be nothing left of this area. And make sure that this area stays pristine and what have you. So conservation is a major Jewish concern. Now we have to be very careful, but it has to make sense from a proper science perspective, and that isn't there. There's a big disagreement as to what's going on. Let's give someone else a chance. What's your name?
Are there any books you recommend on these topics? Besides you mentioned Black Box and other books.
You know what? It depends on what the topic is and what one wants to learn. I believe in science for the sake of science and getting the best science education one can, and learning science from science books. So I believe that every book on astronomy, every book on cosmology is worth its weight in gold, if it's done properly. But one has to read it with open eyes and see God's hand in doing it. So just look at, go on the net and Google Hubble telescope and sit back in amazement at what is out there in the universe that Hubble, the photos that Hubble has taken. It's absolutely unreal. So if one wants to get inspired for Rosh Hashanah, do a Google search on Hubble.
Do you have a website?
I do not have a website. I do not have a website. The same reason I don't have a smartphone. That's another talk. It's another talk. Yes, yeah. There's something that's been recorded, for me that I don't take responsibility for.
Thank you, Dr. Presby. And I appreciate your comments and everyone regarding Darwin and all that stuff. But my question is this: it was always my understanding, 57, 78, our current year, means that man was created. There was no man prior to that, which I truly believe. However, when I see articles saying that there are evidence of cultures 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 years ago, writing on cave walls, etc., that's where I get kind of lost. Like, why are we seeing evidence that predates 57, 78 of human activity? And how is that?
Okay, good. What we're seeing evidence of is activity. Is activity by what? Activity by what? And that's a very, very important item and a very important distinction to make. In other words, God created man as a very unique creature. Man was unique. In other words, it was not that, as evolutionists say, we came from animals, and even though the Frum people say that God took an animal and put a soul into that animal. That's not the case. Man was created totally, totally unique. And so our history, and you correctly say, dates back from the creation of man. What happened before that were, as Aristotle put it, walking bipeds. There were animal-like creatures that were human in some characteristic, in some nature, but not human from a proper Torah definition of human, one with a soul, and one that has the capability that a human being from the time of creation of Adam and Chava had. So there were items then, and there were, but these were nothing more than I would call intelligent animals. They're intelligent animals. And if you look in the animal kingdom, you find absolutely remarkable intelligence. Remarkable intelligence. They now have evidence of the wisdom of birds, communication among them, and birds using tools. And you're going to say, hey, look at that society of birds, that uses tools. And these are readily available items. And there are, look at insect colonies of bees. They do amazing, amazing things. Colonies of termites that build air conditioning structures and what have you. So they were much more advanced than these cave writings. They were a class of animals before the unique creation of man. I do not see it as a problem. Again, it depends on what that evidence is and how it's dated and where it's from. Again, there are lots of interesting items that can be done with a creature that is a lot less than a true human being, as defined by the Torah, as defined by what Adam and Chava were, that generated then the human race. Correct. Absolutely.
Indonesian cultures.
Correct. They were pre Adam and Chava, pre-human. Yes.
Is the Association of Orthodox Jewish Scientists still in existence? I haven't followed its progress in years.
No, I have to turn off the recorder to answer that. Yeah, it might be. It might be. It might be. I don't know. I haven't followed it either because I was thrown out. Another story.
Thank you, Dr. Presby. We will be having more events coming up. The next one is October 14th. Anyone who wants to follow upcoming events in the show, just jot down your email and we send out weekly updates. Good night. Thank you so much. Okay. Mine will be in 3 minutes.
In this room?
Where's the plate get put? I'll take yours and I'll find it.